Self-sabotage and self-destruction are intriguing behaviors. Although people generally seek pleasure and avoid pain, they often find themselves in cycles that seem to go against their own interests. This can happen either consciously or unconsciously, leading individuals to wonder why they sabotage their own dreams, relationships, and even their own happiness. By exploring the ideas of Freud, Jung, and Nietzsche, we can better understand the roots of this self-destructive mindset and find ways to overcome it. Sigmund Freud, one of the founders of psychoanalysis, introduced an interesting idea about the destructive impulses within us, called the death instinct, or thanatos. Freud suggested that, in addition to eros, which represents the life instinct and the pursuit of pleasure, there is an impulse that drives us towards self-destruction, chaos, and even death. This concept emerged during a historical moment marked by wars and trauma, such as World War I, which helped explain behaviors that seem irrational and self-destructive. Freud observed war veterans who, instead of avoiding their traumatic experiences, were drawn to them in their dreams and decisions. This led him to understand the tension between eros and thanatos. These two impulses can result in inertia, manifesting in behaviors such as procrastination, fear of the new, and resistance to leaving comfort zones, even if they are harmful. Thus, self-sabotage becomes an expression of the internal force of thanatos, seeking a return to inactivity or a state of pre-existence. Freud described the death instinct, or thanatos, as a deep impulse present in the human mind, manifesting in behaviors that often go against our own interests. This idea may seem strange at first glance, but it helps to understand the complexity of the mind and its motivations. The death instinct manifests in various forms, from simple actions like procrastination to drastic decisions that can destroy projects and relationships that could thrive. A common example of the death instinct is procrastination, something we all face at some point. Procrastinating is not just a matter of poor time management. Often, it reflects a deeper impulse that leads us to avoid the discomfort of facing challenges. When we postpone an important task, we feel temporary relief, but this choice traps us in a cycle of stagnation. By choosing to stay in our comfort zone, even if it means giving up dreams and goals, a person surrenders to inertia and loses the chance to explore their potential and achieve meaningful accomplishments. This self-destructive impulse becomes even stronger in times of uncertainty and crisis. When people feel powerless in the face of difficulties, it is easier to succumb to passivity and self-sabotage. The death instinct, then, appears not only as a force that leads to abandoning goals, but also as a way to protect oneself from the pain of failure and the fear of rejection. As Freud noted, human beings are divided beings, caught between the pursuit of pleasure and the resistance to pain. This inertia transforms into a means of avoiding the discomfort of the struggle for life, causing people to retreat instead of advancing. Furthermore, self-sabotage can be seen as an unconscious protection. When someone does not take risks or commit to their goals, they may be subconsciously trying to avoid the pain that comes with the possibility of failure. However, this choice also means losing out on the pleasure that can come with achievement and success. Freud said that happiness is a temporary state, often threatened by pain, and the desire to avoid discomfort can lead to a life filled with missed opportunities, where people not only fail to reach their goals, but also deprive themselves of rewarding experiences. Additionally, The death instinct can create behavior patterns that become part of a person's identity. The repetition of self-destructive cycles can lead to a sense of helplessness and devaluation. These patterns can perpetuate themselves, causing self-sabotage to become a constant reality, where a person struggles against external challenges and also against the barriers they have built in their own mind. Overcoming this instinct requires awareness and internal work. Recognizing and confronting these self-destructive impulses is the first step in breaking the cycle of self-sabotage. As Freud emphasized, self-awareness is the foundation of healing. By transforming the unconscious into the conscious, people can begin to challenge the death instinct, adopting a stance of confrontation rather than escape, opening themselves up to growth and personal fulfillment. Carl Jung, another important psychologist, expanded our understanding of unconscious processes by exploring the idea of the shadow. For Jung, the shadow represents the aspects of our personality that we repress, often out of fear of judgment or because they do not fit within social norms. These hidden traits, such as aggressive impulses, repressed desires, or unresolved fears, can take on a life of their own in the unconscious and, if not recognized, can lead to self-sabotage. For example, someone who desires independence may end up sabotaging opportunities for success because, in their shadow, there exists an unacknowledged desire for connection with others. Jung warns us that as long as these parts of us remain repressed, they will act outside of our awareness, negatively influencing our actions. To overcome self-sabotage, Jung suggests that we must integrate these shadowy aspects into our consciousness, allowing for a more harmonious and balanced life. In Carl Jung's psychology, the shadow represents those aspects of our personality that we repress or ignore, often because they do not fit the image we have of ourselves. These dark aspects can be seen as mini-personalities that have their own needs and desires, operating in the unconscious and often working against what we consciously want. As Jung stated, "What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you." The main idea is that if we do not recognize and integrate these repressed aspects, we may be at the mercy of autonomous complexes that control our behavior and decisions. Autonomous complexes act as unconscious forces that influence our actions without our full control or awareness. They can create dissonance between what we consciously want and the repressed desires that are hidden in the unconscious. Even if a person has a clear and defined goal, such as achieving financial independence or fulfilling a life dream, these complexes can generate behaviors that sabotage their own initiatives. These internal conflicts between conscious desire and repressed impulses result in a series of self-sabotaging attitudes. Even when there is a clear opportunity for progress, the autonomous complex can trigger feelings of fear, inadequacy, or disinterest, preventing the person from moving forward. This dynamic creates a vicious cycle, where the lack of recognition and integration of dark aspects leads to repeated failures, frustrations, and a constant sense of stagnation. For Jung, the path to overcoming self-sabotage and internal conflicts is to work on integrating the shadow. This process involves bringing repressed content into consciousness and recognizing the needs and desires that have been ignored. By doing so, we begin to understand the origins of our internal struggles and can work to meet those needs in a healthy way. True liberation does not lie in avoiding or repressing the shadow, but in accepting it as part of our process of self-discovery and personal growth. Friedrich Nietzsche analyzed human behavior from an existential perspective, offering a powerful view on how to confront self-sabotage. He predicted that with the decline of religious faith and the rise of nihilism, modern man would face a crisis of meaning. For Nietzsche, the absence of an absolute external meaning, previously provided by religion, could lead to nihilism, a state of hopelessness and lack of purpose, often resulting in self-destructive behaviors. In response to this threat, Nietzsche presented the idea of the Übermensch, which means overman or superman, as an ideal of overcoming. The Übermensch is someone who creates their own meaning, shapes their own values, and overcomes their limitations and fears. For him, self-overcoming, which means transcending one's own weaknesses and fears, is the key to combating self-sabotage and nihilism. Nietzsche's philosophy invites each person to embrace suffering as an essential part of growth and to find strength in pain, transforming internal destruction into an opportunity for self-transformation. He pointed out self-sabotage as a response to the void left by the loss of belief in absolute values and the breaking of traditional certainties. For Nietzsche, the solution to these problems lies in the concept of the Übermensch or overman and the idea of the will to power. The Übermensch is an idea of a human being who not only recognizes nihilism but overcomes it. For Nietzsche, this figure represents someone who is not defined by externally imposed values and instead creates their own values and meanings. The Übermensch does not accept life as it is. They shape it, seeking purpose and meaning in a chaotic world. This idea challenges passivity and conformity, encouraging an attitude of action and self-creation. The journey to becoming an Übermensch involves profound self-knowledge and transformation. It means recognizing the weaknesses and limitations that often manifest as self-sabotage and working to overcome them. Nietzsche believed that true fulfillment comes from confronting and overcoming difficulties rather than merely seeking security or comfort. An important aspect of Nietzsche's philosophy is that to achieve this new state of being, it is necessary to undergo a process of symbolic self-sacrifice. This means dying to the old versions of ourselves, those behavioral patterns that keep us tied to self-imposed limitations. This transformation is not easy. It requires a willingness to face pain and suffering. For Nietzsche, suffering should not be seen as an obstacle, but as an opportunity for growth. He believed that the ability to accept suffering rather than avoid it is what truly strengthens us. Self-sabotage, therefore, is a way of escaping the responsibility of shaping our own destiny and of not facing the suffering that is part of life. The will to power is a central concept in Nietzsche's work. It is not merely about ambition or the desire to dominate others, but an internal drive to grow, create, and surpass oneself. This force is an internal struggle, a constant battle to become the best version of oneself. This struggle can be intense and painful, as it requires us to confront our weaknesses and fears. The will to power encourages us not to accept a passive life, but to challenge our limitations and seek new paths. Thus, self-sabotage can be seen as a resistance to this will, a way to escape the struggle for self-development and personal fulfillment. Nietzsche also recognized that life is chaotic and full of uncertainties. Nihilism arises when people feel lost without absolute values and universal meanings. But instead of resigning or self-sabotaging, the answer to chaos is to actively create our own meaning. Rather than waiting for life to bring meaning, Nietzsche urges us to become the authors of our own stories. This act of creation is what gives life meaning in a world that may seem purposeless. Through self-transformation, acceptance of suffering, and the pursuit of the will to power, each of us can tread the path toward the Übermensch. The self-destructive mindset is a complex phenomenon rooted in conflicts between known and unknown desires, as well as instinctual impulses and external pressures. Drawing from the ideas of Freud, Jung, and Nietzsche, we can understand how people often sabotage themselves, both intentionally and unintentionally, driven by powerful internal forces. Freud shows us that the death instinct is a force we must confront. Jung teaches us that integrating our shadow, rather than repressing it, is key to preventing these internal forces from harming us. And Nietzsche offers a vision of overcoming, where each of us must strive to become an Übermensch, transcending self-sabotage and viewing life as a constant opportunity for growth. Overcoming self-sabotage requires awareness, courage, and the desire to be the author of one's own story. By recognizing and integrating the internal forces that lead us to inaction, we can transform self-destruction into a force for growth, living more intentionally, fully, and authentically.